Bob Dylan. We're going to do Bob Dylan. Now, Bob Dylan's studio albums. Maybe in the future we'll get into comps and the bootleg series and live albums. But I have the wonderful brother David, my Beatle brother. Hi, David.
Hello, everybody.
David's on the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast. And we're going to talk about Bob Dylan's studio albums. Now, a little intro and a little overview what we're going to do. He's got a vast collection of albums. He has 39 studio albums, including the new album that's coming out next week, Rough and Rowdy Ways. And we don't have that yet. It's coming out on CD next week, on vinyl in July. And this is being recorded mid-June-ish 2020, in case you're watching this in 2030 or whenever you're watching this. I don't know how long these things last. So David and I decided I'm going to show every record of the studio, 38 studio records, but we each independently picked our 10. Now, some might be our favorites, some might be just what we're in the mood for. We might have strategically picked some just to kind of showcase a variety, but we each chose 10. We didn't tell each other what we're going to choose, so there may be some overlaps. But I'll show each one in order, and then we'll stop when we pick one that we're going to discuss in detail. But to open this up, we're each going to choose the one album that got us into Dylan the first time, because we're kind of we're the first generation of Dylan, a little of the younger edge of that, because Dylan's first album on Columbia came out in 1962. I think both David and I, and he'll say this more, got into this whole music thing in 64, 2 years later, when the Beatles came here. So I know for myself, I missed the first few years of Dylan, and we'll talk about that, and we'll just run with it. So anything you want to add to that before we start, David?
That's just it. I mean, I picked 10 albums. My first impressions, these are my 10 favorite albums, and then I kind of sat back and was a little bit more strategic, thinking, I missed an era, so what can I pick from there? And there's a lot of times where, there were like 2 albums or 3 albums from an era that were all perfect albums, and I just picked one from that era. Right. So I'm ready to roll.
Okay, so David's going to start.
My intro to Bob Dylan. My first Bob Dylan album. It's actually one of my favorite Bob Dylan albums, but Self-Portrait, which most people hate. But I loved it then, and I love it now. I got into Bob Dylan kind of through the back door. Beatles 60 and 64, and listening to AM pop radio. There were a lot of hit singles by Peter, Paul and Mary, the Byrds, the Turtles, maybe Manfred Mann a little bit later. I really like the songs, and one by one I would say, that's by this guy named Bob Dylan, and that's by Bob Dylan, and that's by. So I said, well, I got to check this out, Bob Dylan. And reason I got this album, also kind of weird. This had come out, and I read a review or a newspaper article about it, and the article said that George Harrison and Ringo Starr and John Lennon were on the album. So, okay, I need to get this album. So I remember buying it and then opening up, and there's a list of all these people he thinks, and none of the Beatles were on it, so I felt cheated. What they were actually referring to is that there's about 3 tracks from the Isle of Wight concert with the band on there, and the Beatles were in the audience at that show, front row. So that's what the author that was referring to. But anyway, that was my first Bob Dylan album. Second Bob Dylan was Greatest Hits Volume 2.
Wow.
I bought that, and almost immediately after that, I bought the catalog.
Yeah, that was what, 71?
Well, that was 7, 8 albums or something.
Yeah. Interesting about Self-Portrait, and probably a lot of people who are watching this may or may not know this. Self-Portrait was considered kind of like his worst album. Grail Marcus wrote a famous review in Rolling Stone, and it started, "What is this shit?
What is this shit?
What is this shit?" But David and I have spoken about this over the years. We both love that record. Wild Horses, that kind of, it's a great record, and it's gotten a whole new audience a few years ago when the we're not going to talk about that, but when the Bootleg series came out, the expanded, now everyone seems to love it. It's kind of been reevaluated, right?
Great album. If I pull a Bob Dylan off the shelf and listen to it, it's more than likely going to be Self-Portrait.
It's a nice listen. So,
Yeah,
okay, my intro is a little earlier than you, just because I remember.
But you were always hipper than I was. Right?
I don't know. Well, I heard the record on the top 40 radio the end of the summer, or whatever it was, of 1965. I heard Like a Rolling Stone, and that was like nothing else. So I bought the 45 of Like a Rolling Stone, and I don't know, a month or two, Highway 61 came out. So this is my first Bob Dylan record. This is the Bob Dylan record considered maybe his greatest rock and roll record. And it's when Al Cooper and Mike Bloomfield, especially those two, really added to it. This is what the year was, 65, the Newport year, where he goes electric and everything, I think,
yes.
Early that year. This record is great, but what's, again, that is a perfect song. To me, it's a game changer. It was like a 5-6 minute song, and radio stations, for the most part, were playing the whole thing. And again, what's great, I'm a big fan of the cutting edge, the bootleg series, and all the versions of this, how he wrestled with it and went through all these incarnations. I think that set has 20, maybe more, variations of Like a Rolling Stone as he's going through.
It started out as a waltz.
Yeah.
So there was also the story with Al Cooper, who plays the organ on that. And he came to the session, and Al Cooper does play the organ, right? He came to the session hoping to play guitar, but I guess Mike Bloomfield was there, and so he said, "We'll go to the organ," and he just sort of improvised, this organ piece, and playback, says, "Keep the organ down. That guy's not an organ player," but somebody said, "No, bring it up," and it's like it makes the song.
It totally makes the song. And Dylan has said that his favorite guitar player ever was Mike Bloomfield. So those two on this record were great. I mean, and the 14-minute version, Desolation Row, or 11-minute, whatever it is. What a great song. It takes a lot of laugh, takes a train to cry, Ballad of a Thin Man.
Queen. That went through a lot of. Takes a lot of laugh. Went through a lot of incarnations.
Yeah. So this is my introduction. And I didn't go back right away, but from then on, I started buying everything, and we'll go through that. So, okay, we'll just start out as to show people. First album, 1962, Bob Dylan. He was signed by John Hammond to Columbia Records. This is pretty much all covers, I think.
The Woody Guthrie song is it?
Song to Woody, right? Song to Woody is this. The pure folk record, just him on the guitar, which he won't do again till many years later. Freewheelin' Bob Dylan. I went back and got this. Obviously, the song that.
Perfect album.
Pardon me?
Perfect album.
Perfect album. But Blown in the Wind. These are the songs that David and I were talking about. We got into Peter, Paul, and Mary. Masters of War, Girl from North Country, Don't Think Twice, It's All Right. Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. I mean, these are sort of the most famous of the Dylan songs probably on here. Times they are changing. My pick, ding, ding, ding. We both picked.
Ding, 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 ding.
We both picked this record for a lot.
Is that what you picked? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was between this and Freewheeling, from the protest era.
This is more topical now, I think, for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. This from this era, great songs. My wife is sitting right over here. I'm not going to talk for her, but she has this great theory that Dylan in his protest era, Dylan is to Phil Oakes as Mozart is to Salieri. And so you get this guy, Bob Dylan, who's kind of this, he self-described song and dance man. So he was in his Woody Guthrie protest period, and he's knocking off these songs like Lonesome Death of Hetty Carroll that are just brilliant, and Phil Oakes, who probably actually believes in the cause, is doing his best but could not compete with Bob Dylan. But these are this album. you know, when the ship comes in, times they are a changing, which I learned from Peter, Paul, and Mary. Horace Brown, God on Our Side, One Too Many More. Great album.
I think the song on here, to me, that's the most chilling, and I think one of his best songs ever, is The Lonesome Death of Hattie Carroll.
Yeah.
An
Perfect
amazing, chilling, beautiful protest song. And I was watching, you should watch on YouTube. He performs that live early on the Steve Allen show. And it's funny when, you know, Dylan is this kind of weird guy, and people still think he's weird. He's probably weirder than ever. He's kind of shy, and he seems uncomfortable with himself when he's with interviews, or, you know, you always think, is he pulling one over on us? But he's so brilliant. I mean, but a lot of people, there are a number of people to this day that just can't accept his voice. And that's why, you know, Albert Grossman, who managed Dylan in this period, put together Peter, Paul, and Mary to get his songs published, and other people
for me.
and it worked.
Yeah.
So we both agree. We both picked this album. To me, it's a perfect album, and it's got this liner notes Dylan wrote himself.
William Zanzinger died a few years ago. He was a real person. That's a real story.
That's in the song Hattie Carroll.
Yeah, and that poor guy. All right.
Another side of Bob Dylan?
Good album.
Yeah. Motorcycle Nightmare is great. My Back Pages, which a lot of you know because of the Byrds, did an amazing cover of that. All I Really Want to Do was covered by Sonny and Cher. Spanish Harlem Instrument. In Chimes of Freedom, I can't speak. Chimes of Freedom, another Byrds cover song.
And Bob Dylan did a good version of that too.
Exactly, he did.
He did. Or not Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen.
And Bob Dylan.
Or Bob Dylan.
And Bruce Springsteen.
Hey, I'm old. I'm retired.
No, that's okay. It Ain't Me, Babe was covered by the Turtles.
When I was referring to. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Bring it all back home. Interesting thing you mentioned. I wasn't going to talk about this, but I don't know if is that the girlfriend? No, that's not the girlfriend. His girlfriend, what's her name? Romolo?
Yeah. She's on the Freewheelin' album.
Yeah, she's the one that really got him to start writing protest songs. And that's something people should know. He didn't come out doing protest songs and right out of the gate doing that. She pushed him into that area. So, wrong woman there. Okay, next. Ding, 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 ding. You didn't?
I went with Highway 61 from that era. So, I mean, that also, I mean, Blonde on Blonde is a perfect album.
We should mention this because this is a perfect album, and this is my favorite Bob Dylan album. So I don't know if you have a favorite. This, by far, is my favorite album, double album. Pop music, rock and roll, folk music, you know, heavily inspired by a woman, Edie Sedgwick.
I didn't know that.
Edie Sedgwick. Leopard.
Brand new leopard skin pillbox
hat was about Edie Sedgwick. In fact, there's a movie that you guys should watch if you're interested. It's a docudrama, and it's about the meeting, how they fall in love. It's about Edie Sedgwick.
Do you have the version with the rarer inside cover?
I do not.
No, you don't. Not that one.
No. This might have been a later, let's see. Yeah, this is a later 70. This is not my original. When we were working the record stores, we'd trade in our old copies of LPs for better ones because we'd shoot them up. Unbeknownst to me in those days that you wanted the earlier pressing of the label, whatever, but whatever. Great record. I Want You was always one of my favorite songs on here.
If someone asks me what's my favorite Bob Dylan song, I usually say Visions of Johanna.
Oh, it's great.
Which is on that.
Also, just like
great opening line.
Yeah, Just Like a Woman, Rainy Day Woman, 12 and 35, which was a single, Everybody Must Get Stoned. A perfect album in my book.
Yep.
Okay. John Wesley Harding, ding, 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 ding. This is one of my choices. What I like about this, I bought this album, and when I remember buying it, when it, like in the first month it came out, and I didn't quite get it because it's kind of his lo-fi record. It's very intimate, very folky, but not in a folky way like his earlier records. I think it was after this, around this point, where I started going back and buying the earlier records before Highway 61. But this was kind of like a country record because it's got, you know, Pete Drake on steel guitar. It's got the guys from Nashville on here. So it's a different sound. And of course, All on the Watchtower, which I didn't even realize when I heard that Hendrix version, 2 years later, I think it came out, or a year later, I didn't remember that song from this album. I didn't know it very well. So then I went back and like they're day and night.
Well, interesting thing about that album is that's the follow-up to Blonde on Blonde. In between there is the Basement Tape sessions. And so he had all those songs that are on the Basement tapes, and none of them are on John Wesley Harding.
Right.
And just so
yeah,
the amount of material that he had available was like just incredible.
Right. I have that in the releases to go through, but it's an order of the release, not when it was recorded. We can talk about that a little bit. But I love this record, and it's a very intimate. It's like, to me, I know it's not exactly like that, but it reminds me of his Nebraska in a bit. Mm-hmm. Not as intimate because there's more musicians on it, but I love this record. Nashville Skyline, ding, 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 ding. I'm easy.
Great record.
Obvious. This is an obvious choice, but I just love this record. This is one of those what the fuck moments of a Bob Dylan record, because I remember I was just starting college. Was this 72?
No, it's 69.
Oh, never mind. I was thinking.
You were in high school.
I remember listening.
Right.
What's interesting about this is everyone like, where did that voice come from? He had this whole new voice.
That whole era. It's this weird nasally thing. You know the cover of that, the guitar he's holding. You know where he got that? It's George Harrison.
George Harrison.
You gave him that guitar. There's pictures of George.
George Harrison, photographed by Elliot Landry. Great. Is that right, Landry? Yeah.
Opening track with Johnny Cash.
Right. It's so funny how they sing "A Girl from North Country," because I just listened to this record the other day again, and they don't really sing well together. They almost sound like they're reaching different keys, but it works in a weird way. Of course, "Lay Lady Lay" was a hit, so he did have a hit off this record. Totally different sounding record for him. Peggy Day, Country Pie.
Threw It All Away. Love that song.
Yeah, but again, it's got all the Nashville people of Norman Blake, great guitar player, Charlie McCoy, Pete Drake, Kenny Buttrey, Charlie Daniels, and Bob Wilson. So again, great Nashville record. Probably his best country record. There's only country, well, real country. Yeah. Okay, you already talked about this, but just show it real quickly. Self-portrait.
Also that same voice.
Yeah. It shifts a bit though. New Morning, ding, ding,
ding, ding, ding, ding, ding.
I picked it too.
Yeah. I love this record. It's an odd record. What's on this? Well, if not for you, it's also, we have to do the Beatle connection. The George Harrison. And actually, I just learned this. What's the song? I went to see The Gypsy, which rumor has is about Elvis Presley, but George Harrison apparently is the electric guitar player on that.
Yeah, you mentioned it. I don't know that.
I've never heard that before. George was around when these were recorded, and some of the takes of that showed up on the bootleg session. But apparently, George made the actual record of that. New Morning, Father and Night, Day of the Locust, Princeton University. I love this album.
Al Cooper's on it again. David Bromberg, who played on a bunch of his records, or several of his records. I really like, I remember when I got this record, this is one of those Dylan records. It took me a long time to get into, not in a bad way, but I really wanted to discover it because there's a lot going on in this record. And it didn't, I don't think, get great reviews or response at the time. If not for you, of course, we love because of George doing that on All Things Must Pass. But what I love is the jazzy scat thing if Dog runs.
What's her name? That's the woman on the back, old blues singer.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. New Morning is great. Three Angels and Father of Night, kind of a gospel feel to it. But what a great record. Again, we both picked it, so
Love
it's
it.
got to be good.
It's fun. Again, it's one. If I pick a Bob Dylan album to play, that's another one that's often it's still in heavy rotation
Right?
for me.
Got it. Now, soundtrack to Pat Garrett.
Ding, 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 ding.
I didn't pick it a ding, 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 but I do love
Yeah.
this.
I love this record. Strange record. I mean, it's a soundtrack album, so it's mostly instrumental, and it's actually, for the most part, variations on the same theme. You know, this Billy theme that he had. Kind of almost new agey sounding. And it's got one of his biggest hit records or most famous songs, "Knocking on Heaven's Door."
That's ironic, isn't it? Yeah.
Nice feel to it. Roger McGuinn, Booker T. Lots of acoustic guitars.
I think Jim Keltner's on it. It's one of the best sounding recorded Dylan albums. For you audiophiles out there, if you want to test your system, if you have great speakers that really open up and are great acoustic sounds,
Ringing guitars.
The acoustic guitar sounds are incredible on this album. I like it too. When people say, "Oh, it's the same song over and over," that's what a musical score is about. If you ever listen to any musical score from motion picture, you get a recurring theme of the soundtrack on the throughout the movie, and that's what soundtracks do. What I like about this, Dylan's actually in the movie, is a Sam Peckinpah film, not a great movie, but interesting movie, and all he does is count beans, corn in the general store.
Why didn't he even win an Oscar for that?
Oh yeah, but this is a great album, and I like it. One interesting note, I think this is the last album of his agreement for Columbia Records before he left Columbia, and then we'll get into the next one. Columbia put something out basically of outtakes without his permission, but because he signs to Asylum. So great soundtrack, really well recorded record. When this album came out, now this is the contractual obligation record, but Dylan didn't like that Columbia put this out. He hated it, and it was a bunch of it's covers for the most. I think it's all covers.
It's all covers.
Like
from either self-portrait or some of them are from New Morning.
Yeah, not great, but this was the first Dylan album maybe that came out when I first worked in a record store at the Warehouse Records, and we played it in the store. And it's a nice listen. Not a great record, but it pissed off Dylan. So Dylan goes to Asylum Records, and he puts out this ding, 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 ding.
Did you pick that one?
I picked this.
Yeah, I like that one, but I didn't. It didn't make the cut.
This doesn't get a lot of love around lately. What's interesting about this, it's the Dylan and the band. They never made a full album together aside from the Basement Tape thing that didn't even come out till later until this. And this launched the 74 tour. And obviously we're not showing the live album. So after that was that live album. And that's the first time I ever saw Bob Dylan. I saw it twice, two of those shows on that tour. And I love this record. I love Robbie Robertson's guitar playing on this record. This was recorded over 3 days in LA, and Tough Mama on a Night Like This. There's two versions of A Night Like This. Forever Young.
Forever Young.
Yeah,
Forever Young's the big hit.
Yeah, right. That's it. And there's two versions of that. Hazel, Tough Mama, Dirgy, You Angel, You. I think it's a really cool record. It's got a funky vibe that the band were going through. And by this time, this is the first time Dylan and the band played together once the band were famous to all of us. We knew about who the band were at this time.
It's not really a country album, but I kind of group it as the last of the, from John Wesley Harding arc through this one.
But it's got a more funky electric sound. It's got a little I don't want to say R&B sound because the band weren't R&B. But
because of the band, but it's got Garth on organ and Robbie. Good record.
It's a soulful sound for Dylan. I think that's really interesting. But again, I love it. Cover artwork by Bob himself, Sir Bob. Not Sir Bob. He's not a Sir, but anyway, this was my ding, ding, ding. And my next one's a ding, 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 probably for both of us. No?
No.
Okay.
Although it could, again, this is one of those ones where I said it could have been this or that.
Now, some consider this as the best Bob Dylan album ever made. Now, why do I have two copies?
Two covers.
Talk about this in the story. Dylan had the record ready to go, and I don't remember. I'm always backwards. He recorded it in New York and then Minneapolis. Then
New York.
He re-recorded half the tracks again.
Yeah.
Well, when the record came out, and this is a personal story. I worked at the Record Factory, which is a small varied chain. I remember it's such a vivid day opening this box. It was a Columbia box, a 25 in a box, when this record came out, because we were so excited, and we put it on, and it sounded so good. One of the best recorded of the Bob Dylan records. It's got an amazing sound. So this is the original cover. It had the liner notes based on the original tapes, and it came out like this. Soon after it, right before the release, it's a whole other story. You can talk about that a little bit if you'd like. Bob Dylan decides to re-record half the record again. And so they changed the back cover from this to this. They took off all the liner notes. Pete Hamill, New York, 1974. This album came out in early 75, and they took this off and put this for the back cover. An amazing record.
This is the test pressing. So the album was ready to go based on the New York sessions. And I get for Christmas, I think Dylan went home to Minnesota, and in a session decided to record four of the tracks. Idiot Wind, If You See Her, Say Hello, I forget. I think he improved the album considerably. I think the final version of the album is much better than what was gonna come out.
Yeah, people are interested in that now just because they're so used to this. They like hearing a different version. Again, this came out in 75, and I remember 3 years later, 1978, I was at my girlfriend at the time, who's a disc jockey, knew some people. There was a guy named Elliot Mazer who was a record producer. He's still alive, lives in New York. He had a studio in San Francisco, but he's the one that was an engineer on Big Brother Holding Company, Cheap Thrills. He co-produced Harvest and a bunch of Neil Young records. We went over to his house one afternoon on a Sunday, and he played me the tapes. This is 3 years after this came out. I had never heard those original tapes, and he cut me a cassette. So for years and years, I had that cassette of the alternate.
I think you gave me a copy. Somebody gave me a copy.
Totally. That's how bootlegs work. And then bootlegs came out and everything. But an amazing sounding record, great songs. Yeah, the newer version's kind of cool and cute and everything. But I agree. I think the original's just one of his greatest records ever. Blood on the Tracks.
Blood on the Track.
I have actually. Is this the that's the test pressing you just showed, right?
Yeah, it was a record store day release.
Yeah.
I mean, the bootleg sessions put out all of the takes.
Right.
A couple of years back, and then that was a record store day. And I just showed you a bootleg CD of what you're showing.
Okay, this is the record store day. I had them out of order here. Okay, next, and what you can talk about this.
Yeah, well, the Basement Tapes was done in '67. That when this came out, '75, I guess.
Yep. Well, right after Blood in the Track.
The Basement Tapes '67 were actually demo sessions at Big Pink, a house in West Saugerties, New York, with the band, who weren't quite the band yet, and they did hundreds of songs, which came out on a big box set a couple of years ago. About a dozen of those songs were circulated on an acetate to Peter, Paul, and Mary and Manfred Mann, and all of these new Dylan songs started popping up.
When the Eskimo was one by
the Eskimo, right? So based on that acetate, the Basement Tapes became legendary, and then I think Robbie Robertson put this one together. So
bootleg.
So this is not really authentic because a lot of the songs were sweetened in 1975. from the 67 tapes. All of the band tracks on that, I believe, are new recordings. They were not done in the basement in 1967, but Robbie and the band wanted a paycheck, so they, give them half the. So it's an okay album, I think. Completely obsolete by the box set.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's kind of nice. It's funny. I know I've been seeing a handful of people buying Mobile Fidelity master recordings of this record. As much as I like this, I don't see it as a high fidelity, hi-fi audio file.
Oh, it's lo-fi.
I kind of say, why bother? But to each, I get it.
The basement
things that I bought.
Yeah, they're fantastic. Yeah. And this is an okay album.
It's fun at the time because we had heard some of these songs covered by other artists at the time.
I don't count that as one of the legitimate studio albums. I count it as like special.
You Ain't Going Nowhere, which
yeah, Tears of Rage, I Shall Be Released, great stuff.
Okay, now we got some Desire.
Ding ding ding. I could have picked Blood on the Tracks, like this one. I also love this album. One of the things I like about this is the sound of it and the band. So it's got these two women, Scarlett Rivera on violin and Emmylou Harris doing backing vocals. And great song, Hurricane, One More Cup of Coffee.
Hurricane is an incredible single.
Isis, the Rolling Thunder Review era, Black Diamond Bay. It does have Joey on it, so it's a minus on that.
One More Cup of Coffee is a great song.
One More Cup of Coffee, one of the best songs. So yeah. I love the feel and the groove of this. One of my favorite Dylan.
You know what's interesting is I remember when this came out, because I was used to, and for the year before this came out, this is about a year after Blood on the Tracks. I love the sound and the recording of Blood on the Tracks. And I always thought when this came out, the record, not the musicianship like you were talking about with Scarlett on violin, but I thought it was kind of a muddy sound. It sounded, I don't know, like almost like Phil Spector stuck something in there. I know he didn't. It wasn't as easy, smooth, acoustic-y.
Dylan has never been a perfectionist for recording. He goes for vibe better than perfection.
Although there are exceptions, yeah.
He likes, one or two takes.
Or 16. Well, that's another story for us to get into talking about takes and things if we ever do one of these on the bootleg series. Okay. Street Legal.
Ding. Another record. I thought Dylan was on a run there. I love this. This was where he has his white suit.
His 1978.
His Elvis era. I love the song "Changing of the Guards," which a 6-minute song which opens it. I haven't a clue what it's about. You listen to the lyrics, but a great sort of groove to that. I also like the he has these girl background singers in the band on it. Baby Stop Crying is on that. Where Were You Tonight? I like this album. One of my favorites.
I'm going to do a personal
I like the cover too.
The cover is great. I'm going to do a personal story about this album because this was 1978. I got out of college and I went to Europe. And it was after I left my jobs in the record stores after 5 years or whatever it was working in record stores and through college. And it was the first time I was there for almost 3 months backpacking around Europe. First time I didn't have any access to new records. And it's kind of like being a junkie. You don't have new records. So I was in Amsterdam and I went to a record store. And the thing about, especially in those days, in the 70s, all the record stores, you could listen to anything you wanted behind the counter. So I went in to a record store in Amsterdam and I listened to 3 albums I listened to on headphones. Of course, I didn't buy anything. I'm not going to carry a vinyl around in hot, Europe for several months. But I listened to this. I listened to Ry Cooder's album Jazz. And I listened to Bruce Springsteen, Darkness on the Edge. Yeah. I like this record. And another thing about this, I think I listened to this because the next day I went to Rotterdam and I saw Dylan on tour. And this was when he had the big Vegas type of show. I saw it there, then I saw it in Oakland when I got back that fall, when he had all the singers and all the orchestration. And And
then I wrote,
yeah, we didn't really talk about that with Dylan. You know, again, I first saw Dylan in '74. I saw him in '75 during the wild, what I call his rock and roll punky tour, or '76 with the Thunder, Rolling Thunder. And then
Where
I
did you see
saw the
that?
last waltz.
Where did you see the Rolling Thunder?
I saw,
They,
I
I don't
think
know
it
that
was
they came
in,
to the Bay Area at all.
no, it was in Los Angeles
Oh,
somewhere,
okay.
Southern California. Then David and I both saw him at the last waltz in '76. And then of
And I
course,
call this tour the '78 White Elvis.
yeah, the '78 I saw him twice. And he did songs, so he did Change in the Guard. And with all those like gospel-y type of voices sing. I do like this. I almost picked this one too, because this has become a favorite over the years.
Yeah.
But I didn't, but I'm glad you did.
What do we have? Ding! Did you pick that one?
I did not.
Um,
I almost did.
Almost did, yeah. Or Save that goes with it is the next album, the Jesus era. So I heard he was going to go Jesus, and you and I did the Beatles religious show a few weeks back. I thought, come on, Bob Dylan going Jesus, give me a break. But it's a great record. And I remember you and I he did his Jesus tour, and the tour opened in San Francisco, and he did
7 nights, 14 nights.
He did a 2-week run. I don't know how many shows, but a 2-week run at the Fox Warfield Theater. And prior to that, he was playing stadiums. Either way, there wasn't playing or playing 20,000 seat hockey arena, sports arena. So here he was playing. What was a Fox Warfield seat? 3,000, 4,000.
3,000, yeah. Like an old movie theater.
And we went opening night, so the first show.
You and I and Nancy.
Yeah, and our friend Larry, where I want to talk about.
Walked out.
So in this show, he only does songs from the Jesus songs from Slow Train and brand new songs we'd never heard, which became the second Jesus album, Saved, and that's it. And I loved that show. It was what it reminded me of was if you could travel back in time and see Bob Dylan at Greenwich Village in 1961. We didn't know who he was and he didn't know the songs.
Yeah.
But rather than his greatest hits, he's playing all this new material. Our friend Larry flipped.
People were booing, and some people
booing.
walked out.
Well,
some people
booing Bob Dylan is a sort of a small industry, I guess.
I ended up seeing 3 of the shows. Nancy got tickets, and of that, he paid 14 shows, and they had sold out. But then Bill Graham had produced it. Some people were asking for refunds and things once they started, because this, again, as David said, the first show of the tour, nobody had any idea.
We didn't know what was going to happen.
Didn't do one hit, not one secular song.
He did this, and the Saved album.
And I did see one of the shows later on where I think it's on the box set that came out of the Jesus Christian series, where Mike Bloomfield showed up and played guitar. I was at that show too. I think, again, this is a great sounding record too. So Jerry Wexler produced it, Barry Beckett. I think, isn't Mark Knopfler play on this song? I think Mark.
I think he might.
Yeah.
Also, one of Bob Dylan's best vocals.
Yeah.
Is the song When He Returns.
Yeah. Oh God.
And Dylan singing.
Solo piano and his voice, amazing. But Mark Knopfler from Dire Straits' his guitar playing adds to this record beautifully.
The bootleg series on the Jesus era is also outstanding.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't want to shortchange Jesus here. But I'll just show these together and you can say what you want. I did not pick these.
Neither did I. Lesser than that. I like what's the one from Saved? And Shot of Love, I don't really like at all, except for, what's the last song on it?
Every Grain of Sand.
Every Grain of Sand. Yeah. Really good Dylan song. All right.
Ringo's on it, Beatle Connection.
Those 3 are the Jesus era.
Yeah, and then of course the next year he converts back to Judaism, and takes his son to the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem and has him bar mitzvah at the Wailing Wall. So we love you, Jesus, or Bob.
Pressing On, that's the name of the song. I'm getting old. Love that song.
Ding, 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 ding.
Ding, 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 ding.
Wow, like Minds.
Yeah.
Infidels, Bob Dylan. First of all, the song on this record to me is
Joker Man.
Song is Joker Man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great music video, MTV period. This is 80s. What year is this? 1983.
Maybe. 83. Is that right?
Beautiful video. Look for the MTV video. Well, it was on MTV. They made all classic art pieces. Dylan's not in it, not a performance. A beautiful video and a beautiful song, Joker Man.
Joker Man. I like I, Don't Fall Apart on Me Tonight.
Man of Peace. It's about Israel being picked on.
Or Neighborhood Bully.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Neighborhood Bullies.
Wrong one. Kind of... Sweetheart Like You is a great song.
Good rock and roll record.
Yeah, and and Mark Knopfler co-produces this and is on here too. Again, a great sounding record. I think it might be his best 80s record, maybe.
It's a low bar, but yeah, this might be one of the next bootleg series, because if you do collect actual bootlegs, there's a lot of outtakes from this that are really outstanding. One of my favorites.
Empire Burlesque.
Yeah.
This is one. I like Tight Connection to the Heart. It's got his singers in it. It's like a novelty song.
It starts to suffer from that 80s sort of sound.
Yeah, the 80s flourishes. Now, somebody who produced this, they got fucked over. Sly Dunbar is on here, and Mike Campbell from and Benchmar from Tom Petty's band. So it's got great people on here, but yeah, it's
forgettable.
It's okay. Anyway. Yeah, someone's going to love this. I mean, someone loves every record. And again, every Dylan record has a couple great tracks on it. We dig deeper.
Yeah, okay, next one, right?
Knock down low. We'll phone you, Mr. Dylan.
And then this one too, right? Yeah.
Oh, except
I think got the Grateful Dead thing on it.
Novio is on here.
Yeah, with the Grateful Dead.
Novio is a great song, great single. It's got Ugliest Girl in the World, which I don't remember what that's like. Let's Stick Together. Is that the cover song, Let's Stick Together? I forget.
Yeah, it's a stupid record.
Yeah, it's not a very, but I would say Silvio is worth it right there. 1988. This is called.
I did see the show when he was backed by the Grateful Dead. It was that era. Yeah, it was a good show.
I never saw that, and I hate that record.
The record's horrible, but the show was real good.
The record's horrible.
Gary Garcia was healthy then.
Okay, next two I only have on CD. First this.
Worst album.
Under the Red Sky.
Wiggle, 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 right? Or whatever.
Oh, that, right.
George Harrison's on that album. Right?
According to David Bacon, George Harrison is on every Bob Dylan record. Then Dylan does something interesting.
He does. I didn't ding that one, but I like that
either. But Dylan goes back. Remember early on I said.
And the companion that goes with it.
Yeah, remember I said Dylan hadn't done an acoustic solo record until many years later. This is where he started. It's a folky record. It's intimate. It's just him and acoustic guitar. He recorded this in his basement or his garage studio. I guarantee you, Dylan's garage studio is not like your garage studio at home. In fact, the Wilburys recorded at Dylan, and many other artists recorded at Dylan's studio. I kind of like this record, but the companion record is a dinger for me.
Is it?
Yeah. This is the better of the two record, of the two, I think. It's called World Gone Wrong. This was recorded in, I think, Santa Monica or Malibu, at Jackson Brown's studio. I did my research. make this shit up as I go along. Dylan produced it, and it's just him again. Very intimate, a little more bluesy than the other one, bluesy folk, and I think it's really good. It sounds great. World Gone Wrong is one of my picks.
My take on those two albums is that, you know, the previous ones, Knockdown Loaded, the Down the Groove, Dylan was going through kind of a low period in his songwriting. He wasn't coming up with a lot of great songs. And I don't think he had much material. So he did those two albums, old stuff, like Harry Smith, you know, anthology type of thing. Great, and it shows what a good guitar player he is, too.
Yeah.
With both albums.
Yeah, exactly. Now, then there's a little moment of a break, and then something wonderful is about to happen. Do you agree?
Ding, ding, ding.
It's not a ding dinging for me, but I could see
ding,
why.
Ding, 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 yeah.
Talk about it.
So as I said, yeah, those 80s, 90s albums, which were not very good. 2 albums of old folk stuff, a break, and then comes this album.
1997.
This becomes, you know, the renaissance, the beginning of what I think of late era Bob Dylan, and his renaissance as a performer and as a songwriter. So I picked this one. This album has grown on me through the years. So the more I listen to it, Lovesick, Million Miles, Trying to Get to Heaven, Not Dark Yet, Cold Iron Bound, and up until this past month, the longest Bob Dylan song ever recorded, called Highlands, which is the shortest 16 minutes. His return as a songwriter, it's more or less a blues album, electric guitar based. Love this record.
Produced by Daniel Lanois.
We skipped over an album. Oh Mercy. Speaking of which, right? Back in that, which was all, I almost considered picking that album, which I going through that. Did you folk forget to pull that, or?
You know, okay. I'm just gonna do a little interlude here. I
got it.
If somebody wants the entire Dylan collection, get this box. This is everything up through Tempest, and it's got an extra track. Okay. Yeah, I don't think
we skipped over this one. Also a good album. Daniel Lanois produced great his sound. So, where are we?
Here.
Yeah, these albums.
This continues his renaissance. This is a great record. I mean, the name of the song isn't so great, Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
Mississippi is on that one?
Pardon me?
Is Mississippi on that one, or?
No. Yes. Yes. And what's interesting, Dylan finally, after Daniel Lanois and after all the other producers he tried to be hip with, or this or that, Don Was, I think, worked with him at one point too. He brought it back, and all these next records, all his later records, are produced by Jack Frost. Jack Frost is Bob Dylan. That's his pseudonym as a producer, and I think he's his best producer right now. He knows how his band works. He's tight with his band. His band that's been doing the Never Ending Tour is fabulous. Charlie Sexton on guitar on some of these records is great.
Now, you got to get used to the old Bob Dylan voice, though.
It's a different voice.
Yeah. I mean, his as you get through these albums, his voice gets craggier and more gruff with each consistent album. So a lot of people are really put off by that.
Yeah, I think it's a great new voice. It's a different voice. Probably the bad news about this record, if there is any, it was released on September 11th, 2001. Probably got lost a little bit. Although, is that the one? I think one of these, that it was like the first album Dylan had that debuted at #1.
Was it?
And he was and it turned out, a little trivia, I think it's that album, I could be wrong, it's one of these albums. First album he had that debuted at #1 on Billboard charts, and at the time he was 65 years old. So he was the oldest artist to ever have a #1 debuting single up until probably Paul McCartney.
Oh, Paul McCartney.
Yeah. So we'd Beatle connection.
Oh. Another in this same series, similar sound.
Great records. Thunder on the Mountain's great. I love that. Rolling and Tumbling. He's doing sort of a bluesy thing. He's getting into a little more. The makeup of his band are doing almost like a country swing, a little bit like a jazzy country swing fusion folk thing.
I like that cover too.
Yeah, great band, great artist. I did see him several times over these years. 3 other times I've seen him in the last 15 years. One was terrible, the other 2 were good. So he's hit and miss. Somebody just stands there to the side of the stage, looking to the band on a keyboard, never picks up a guitar. Doesn't always work. Together Through Life.
Yeah. Another one in the series. It's all these last 3 are kind of similar albums, I think.
Yeah, they are similar, but they're all really good records. This is a great series for Bob Dylan. I mean, I think his 2000s, all his records since 97, 2000s have all been really interesting and I think good. Okay.
And then there's the next one. Yeah, okay.
People hate this record and I think it's hysterical. I like it. I put it on a Christmas
ding, ding, ding. Did you pick this one?
No, it's not a ding, ding for me.
I mean, give me a break. I mean,
Bob Dylan singing "Here Comes Santa Claus." You got to watch.
Oh,
hear what I hear. You got to watch the video of him doing "Here Comes." Was it "Here Comes Santa Claus" or whatever it is? Yeah. It's hysterical.
You kind of got to put this with the Shags philosophy of the world. Come on.
It's good. Come on.
Yeah, great. Yeah, why not?
Okay, I like it's not the Shags philosophy, David. You ignorant slut. Okay. Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, I from this era, I picked the Time Out of Mind. Also a great album. Got a song by John Lennon.
Beatle connection. The final song, Roll On John, which you probably take a little bit of that from 9/11 as well, Roll On, but it's about John Lennon. It's got Tempest, which is like a 15-minute or long 14-minute song about the Titanic, and not just the ship, the actual movie, mentioning Leo DiCaprio and the James Cameron film. But Duquesne, what's it called? Duquesne Whistle? Duquesne Whistle, sorry.
Which is a good song.
And it co-written with Robert Hunter, who was all those Jerry Garcia co-lyricist for the Grateful Dead. So Grateful Dead connection. I love this album. I just listened to it again last night to refresh my memory. But Tempest, and then
I don't like the cover.
Try something else.
Ding, ding, ding.
Okay, go.
The beginning of the Sinatra era. So he does all these cover songs of a Great American Songbook that Frank Sinatra have recorded. First of 3 albums, 5 if you count, Triplicate is actually 3 records. I picked this one to represent the 3. My wife and I have a huge argument about this all the time. I think these are great records. First of all, I love the Great American Songbook, all these classic old songs. And you want to come in and argue? And that album, it opens with "I'm a Fool to Love You," and he just owns that song. It's the same song that Billie Holiday opens up her last album, "Lady in Spain," and or "Lady in Satin," and why not? Bob Dylan doing the Great American Songbook. Great stuff.
I like him too. I'll talk about it in a minute, but and then he follows up with another one.
That one.
Some of the Dylan fans, especially those of you who go on the forums, like the Hoffman forums, they get, God, okay, he does that stuff. Why can't he write another album of his songs? People are selfish. I'm sorry. Dylan has put out more than almost anyone else. So he wants to take a detour.
People, the 50-year career, they get so upset with Bob Dylan because he's not the Bob Dylan they want to be. So he goes country, okay? He goes country, deal with it. He goes Jesus, all right? Go with it. Right now he wants to sing Sinatra.
He goes electric.
Right?
Yeah.
Relax, I mean, just let him do what he wants to do.
Yeah, fans are fickle and everything. Now, this is my ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, I mean, I could pick that one too.
This is the third. Okay, this is the third of the quote trilogy of Standards albums. And what he did, this was a 3-record set. So if you thought that people heads were blowing up after those first 2, he puts out another one, a 3-record set. His only 3-record set. You read on these forums again, oh, I bought this CD, it could have fit on 2 CDs. Well, the point, each of the 3 records is a different mood, a different feel, and they're themed very much like the Sinatra thematic albums of, he did for Capitol Records early on. Amazing, amazing record. This is the deluxe edition, which is almost like an old-time folio. And again, what's really interesting about this record was recorded, these records, all 3 or 5 of these, as David said, discs, were recorded live at the Capitol Tower, Capitol Record Studio in LA. No overdubs, so they really rehearsed it, got it really tight. And on some of it, there's pedal steel guitar. There's, again, the great guitar playing by Charlie Sexton and some other artists, of his band.
That one is the most produced of the 3, or has the most arranged, because that's got a horn section on it.
But they really rehearsed it, and it's live in that Capitol. You got to, okay, those of you who don't know, the Capitol Recording Studio, the great Sinatra records, Nat Cole records later on. What a great recording studio on Hollywood and Vine down in LA. But the sound of this record is amazing.
He also did something with his voice. I mean, the studio albums prior to that, Tempest and Modern Times, his voice was getting really, especially the Christmas one, getting really craggy. But I don't know what happened. He stopped smoking maybe or whatever, but his voice kind of cleared up for those.
Yeah. It's a rough voice. So, I don't recommend these people who are expecting the friggin' Rod Stewart singing the covers, or even Harry Nilsson's beautiful record of oldies, or Linda Ronstadt. It's a different beast completely. And Dylan actually makes them his. And he actually, for the most part, got good reviews when those records came out. There's wankers that didn't like it, but whatever. That's the end of the 38 studio records. The next one, Rough and Ready, Rowdy Ways, comes out, and maybe we'll get together and we'll talk about it. I'm going to just, as we close out here, and if you have any last words after this, I'm just throwing this in. This is a Record Store Day release. Side tracks that are alternate, weird versions. I think 2 live, but
that has all the sort of loose. It has all the previously unreleased stuff that was on the Biograph box set, and all the new songs from Greatest Hits Volume 2. It's got all this sort of loose flotsam and jetsam and various stuff collected on one set.
I mean, it's great, because one of my favorite singles, which I still have the single, I'm disappointed that it hasn't turned up on albums, are both, it's on here, the acoustic version of George Jackson. And it's very topical right now for a lot of reasons, but the single of that, which I have, it has the big band version and the acoustic version of George Jackson. And I just love that. And the other song, which actually was a big hit for Dylan, which I think one of his last great single is Things Have Changed. And that was for the movie, that Michael Douglas movie on that soundtrack, where he's the teacher professor. Don't remember. Someone's going to write it down there. But Bob Dylan, we covered that. Didn't go on for 6 hours.
It's a long career. And then the new album comes out in a couple of weeks.
Yep. Yeah. So
Murder Goes Foul, his longest song ever.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I think it's really interesting. So David and I have been Dylan fans for over 50 years, and we're not experts like AJ Weberman, who goes through Dylan's garbage. He's a garbologist. Although David and I have gone through Paul McCartney's garbage, but that's a story we told
that story
elsewhere. So thanks,
right.
everybody out there. Thanks, David.
It's time for these boot heels to be wandering.
Things have changed.
Things have changed. All right.
Never loves
Bye.